Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of Africa Today, where we get you the latest news and events taking place on the African scene. And we start off with our major top stories and reports. The United Nations said hundreds of migrants were released on Tuesday from a detention center in the Libyan capital, Tripoli, as heavy gunfire rang out across the city. We have the details in the following report.
The United Nations said that hundreds of migrants were released on Tuesday from a detention center in the Libyan capital Tripoli as heavy gunfire rang out across the city. At least 200 of the migrants made their way to a center for processing resettlement cases set up in Tripoli by United Nations Refugee Agency UNHCR, where they were seeking access. The International Organization for Migration, another UN agency, said 600 had been released from the Abu Slim center. Tripoli has been hit by renewed violence since April, when the eastern-based Libyan National Army LNA began battling forces aligned with the internationally recognized Tripoli government for control of the capital. Migrants have been repeatedly caught in the crossfire during clashes in Tripoli, and Abu Slim is located in the south of the capital, close to the front lines. Heavy artillery fire could be heard from center of the city. Several thousand migrants are held in detention centers officially run by the Tripoli government. In practice, these centers are controlled by armed groups and there is widespread abuse inside them, according to migrants. Libya, with an estimated migrant population of 640,000, has been one of the main departure points for migrants trying to reach Europe.
Welcome back, and moving on to Congo, the World Health Organization and Congolese authorities are proposing changes to how some Ebola patients are cared for. New guidelines show after a patient's death challenge the accepted medical theory that survivors are immune to reinfection. We have the details in the following report.
The World Health Organization and Congolese authorities are proposing changes to how some Ebola patients are cared for. New guidelines show after a patient death challenged the acceptance medical theory that survivors are immune to reinfection. There are many unanswered questions surrounding the circumstances of the woman's death in Democratic Republic of Congo, which has not previously been reported. But it has raised concerns because the woman, which name has not been released for confidentiality reasons, was thought to have had immunity after surviving infection, but fell ill again with Ebola and died. Congo's Ebola outbreak has infected over 3,000 people and killed more than 2,000 since August last year. It is the second worst outbreak after one in West Africa between 2013 and 2016 that killed more than 11,000 people. In response to the case, health authorities have reviewed the clinical histories of all Ebola survivors working with Ebola patients. Much remains unknown about how immunity workers in Ebola survivors, including how treatments might affect a patient suspectedly to reinfection.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Three United Nations agencies warned a record 45 million people across southern Africa face severe food shortages in the next 6 months, and with around a quarter of them currently enduring drought-induced crisis food insecurity. We have the story.
Three United Nations agencies warned a record 45 million people across southern Africa face severe food shortages in the next 6 months, with around a quarter of them currently enduring drought-induced crisis food insecurity. The 16-member Southern African Development Community is in the grips of severe drought as climate change wreaks havoc in impoverished countries struggling to cope with extreme natural disasters such as Cyclone Idai, which devastated Mozambique area this year. The Food and Agriculture Organization and the International Fund for Agricultural Development appealed jointly for urgent funding to help the effects of climate change in Africa. Margaret Mallow, Acting Regional Director for Southern Africa at the World Food Programme, said that they have had the worst drought in 35 years in central and western areas during the growing season. Southern Africa's temperatures are rising at twice the global average, according to the International Panel on Climate Change, and the region includes 6 of the 9 African countries said to be hardest hit by adverse weather in coming years: DR Congo, Malawi, Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe.
Welcome back, dear viewers. And on the Arab Sustainable Development Week that started on Sunday in Cairo, we're joined over the phone by Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former assistant to the Foreign Minister. Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador. Ambassador Haridi, under the auspices of Egypt, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the third edition of the Arab Sustainable Development Week started on Sunday in Cairo. How do you see the significance of this summit or this conference, or this week in specific, not only for the Arab world but also for the African continent?
Sustainable development has become a goal and objective for not only the Arab world but for the international community. We have seen various initiatives to achieve sustainable goals, whether through the United Nations system or the African Union. And in Egypt itself, we have Vision 2030, which lays out the objectives of sustainable development and the mechanisms and resources needed to carry out that vision for sustainable development 2030. And in the opening statement yesterday, the President, whose speech was delivered by the Minister of Planning, he emphasized the need to strengthen partnerships between the Arab world, the African Union, and the United Nations system. And also he insisted on the need for complementarity among the various plans, sustainable development plans, elaborated through the United Nations or through the African Union or through the Arab League and other international institutions. And that's, I guess, one central point, central issue in speaking about sustainable development in the Arab world. The Arab countries should coordinate their efforts with the international organizations and regional organizations in order to maximize the benefits of their own plans in this regard. One of the most interesting statistics that was cited in the speech of the President yesterday was that the Arab countries need 230 billion US dollars per annum per year in order to achieve sustainable development. But of course, this is a huge sum of money. But of course, that calls for mobilizing all the Arab resources from Morocco to Saudi Arabia in order to make sure that the Arab countries would be able to achieve high rates of growth in order to absorb in order to create job opportunities for the Arab youth. This is, as you may know, madam, unemployment, the high rate of unemployment in the Arab world needs to be tackled, and it's one of the reasons why the terrorist organizations succeed in recruiting young men who have lost confidence in the future. So the Arab world is called upon to marshal all its resources in order to come up with the sum of money for the next few years in order to stabilize Arab society socially, politically, and economically. I guess the third edition of the sustainable development in the Arab world is very important. It's timely, and it's one of the sustainable development is one of the major, not only one of the major concerns, or one of the most significant challenges facing the Arab governments and Arab people. Having said that, I guess in order to make sure that we are in a position to achieve the high rates of growth, we have to find solutions for the crises and conflicts that have raged throughout the Arab world in the last 8 years. Because without tackling these crises and these conflicts and these problems, I'm not sure that the Arab plans for sustainable development would succeed.
Right. Well, Ambassador Hariri, do we expect the Arab Sustainable Development Week to come up with recommendations or initiatives aiming at promoting sustainable development in the Arab world and the African continent also?
Well, for sure, the conclusions of this third edition of the Arab Sustainable Development Conference are to be expected. And I think one of the central issues that would be discussed in the third edition is how to achieve a continuous rate of growth until 2030. 2030, as you may know, Madam, when the UN summit in December 2015 agreed on the Sustainable Development Plan, the Millennium Sustainable Development Plan. It covers the period from 2015 to 2030, with 17 objectives to be implemented. The latest report in this regard has indicated that the international community, including the Arab world, are lagging behind in implementing these objectives. So I think that the most important issue facing the third edition of the Arab Sustainable Development is how to marry the United Nations Millennium Development Plan 2030, the African Union Agenda for Development 2063, and the national sustainable development plans of each and every Arab country. For instance, in the case of Egypt Vision for Sustainable Development to 2030. So I believe that the Arab countries have tremendous tasks ahead of them, but there is no alternative but to succeed in this endeavor, because on this success depends the future stability of the Arab countries, not only the future stability, but social stability of Arab society. We have to realize that creating employment for the young must be one of the central objectives of Arab governments, and I expect the third edition of the Arab Sustainable Development Conference would emphasize the importance of such an endeavor.
Right. Mr. Ambassador, how do you see the significance of the role of universities and institutes in the implementation of sustainable development in the Arab world and Africa?
Well, of course, when we speak about sustainable development, we are speaking not only of government actions, but actions by civil society, by think tanks, by academia, and by universities and institutes. So it's a collective effort, because when we speak about sustainable development is not only about economic performance or financial discipline. It's about it's also about the development of human resources. And this is another important question facing the Arab world. The importance and the necessity, the absolute necessity of developing human resources. And when the development of human resources it means education, culture, arts. So this is an issue. This is a subject. This is a subject that universities, institutes should work on it. And I guess Arab governments should set up networks with various Arab universities across the Arab world to really maximize the initiatives and the efforts and the plans on sustainable development. Because when we speak on sustainable development, we have to stress that there will never be sustainable development without development of human resources.
Right. Well, sir, what are the major critical success factors in achieving sustainable development in Africa?
Would you repeat the question? Excuse me, madam.
Yes, sir.
Would you please?
Right. What are the major critical success factors in achieving sustainable development in the African continent?
Well, I believe that the African countries are very serious about working hard and on achieving this agenda, development agenda of 2063, and I guess there is progress in the score. For instance, if just allow me to give you one example, last July, the African countries agreed on the creation, on the establishment of the free trade zone, the African continental free trade zone that would cater for almost 1 billion Africans in the future. It includes almost 54 African countries. That would really, once it's achieved, and once African countries would overcome certain administrative and financial challenges, that would open the doors for sustainable development in the countries that signed this free trade agreement. On the other hand, also developing the infrastructure, the road, railway infrastructure, and linking various African geographic regions with air links, sea links, with road infrastructure. What that would help greatly in achieving and in carrying out development plans. And I guess there is a program, an African program, on the development of infrastructure, and work is progressing on linking Cairo to Cape Town. In other words, linking Northern Africa with Southern Africa, and that once this road, this highway linking the north and the south of Africa is completed, I guess that would be a great step ahead, a great step forward.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, for your valuable insight. And dear viewers, with this we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more coming up here on Nile TV International.